this video right here by Ebbenhart, where he got to interview some developers. The title of the video is going to be A Season of Discovery Sequel Confirmed. Now, it is a classic Cataclysm interview. I'm pretty sure exclusive Cataclysm Classic developer interview. But I'm guessing he got to sneak in a question about Season of Discovery as well in the same thing. So yeah, we're going to take a look at this one. It is a 27-minute video. I'll be linking you the video as well, and you will be seeing my reactions to it right here. So let's get right into it, shall we? It is a different Ebbenhart video than what I'm used to. Now, I've been tuning into his streams, so I've been seeing quite a bit of his face camera content anyway, but he hasn't really had that in too many of the videos in the past. If you had turned the face camera a little bit up, would have been perfect for me, but then again, hey, let's go.
Hey guys, thank you for coming to this interview. I'm Ebbenhart, and today I'm being joined by two devs from the Classic WoW dev team, Nora Valletta and Chris Zierhut. How are you two doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Excited for this interview, and I know we don't have much time, so I'm just going to dive into the very first question. With Cataclysm being considered the beginning of retail to a lot of players, would you say that as the Classic dev team, you'll continue down this release path, or will this be the final re-release? AKA, are we getting Mr. Pandaria Classic, for example?
So we can't tell you about any of our plans for the future for lots of reasons, but I can tell you something we learned over the last 4 years of Classic, is that a lot of people want to play World of Warcraft in a lot of different ways. And for a lot of people, the end of the Classic era is in a different place. For some people, like, the Classic era actually ends as soon as there's any expansions. For some people, it's Burning Crusade, Lich King, Cataclysm. Because everybody has their own different place depending on where they were in the world and how they feel about it. And what we really want to do is deliver to all of these players, let them keep playing while they want to play it. So Classic era servers continue, and we do new seasons like Season of Discovery, where we explore that Classic era world and let people keep playing it, or we do crazy stuff like hardcore mode, where we let people keep exploring in that world. And then there are some players that what they really want to do is they want to keep playing with the guild they've built, the character they have,
yeah,
the friendships they forged, and keep carrying that forward to the next thing. And for those players, Cataclysm is the right next step. And we can't claim that that's everyone. Some people are going to want to always stick to the Classic era. Some people are going to want to jump forward and go to Dragonflight or the War Within. But all these players want to play World of Warcraft differently. And our goal as a Classic team is to let them be able to play it that way, to provide that opportunity to play WoW the way they want to play it.
Okay. That sounds awesome. Thank you. So then, did any of the data or information you've gathered from Season of Discovery's development make your team change things for Cataclysm Classic?
So the Classic team, as I think you're probably already aware, we work on all.
Here's the thing. I did not talk to Ebbenhart about this beforehand, and I kind of wish I had now, because I would love to hear Blizzard's most recent thought about this. But I would love to hear why we're not getting Wrath era servers, considering so many people consider Wrath to be the end of the Classic WoW. And like, even though Cataclysm is really popular, we can't really deny that Wrath maybe has the biggest fall-off rate in any of the expansions that have come out. Like, you have Vanilla to TBC that had the, let's just use fictive numbers here, 10% drop-off, and then TBC to Wrath had another 10%. I would say Wrath probably has 30%. Based on those fictive numbers, so 3 times more people stop after Wrath and don't go into Cata. Now, meanwhile, if we had Wrath era servers, they would keep playing, because now, if you want to play Wrath, and Wrath being the current content, the only viable option you have is private servers. There's no Wrath era. We have Classic era, sure, there's no Wrath era though. So the only viable reason to me why there isn't a Wrath era, it's gonna be one of two things. Number one, a Wrath re-release, so like either a Classic WoW re-release going into Wrath again, or a literal Wrath fresh server, where it's based on the Wrath patch, so you level from 1 to 80 a little bit faster, as it is in Wrath, right? And then you just go through level 80 content in a phased content style. So you go through Nax first, Ulduar, Tok, and then ICC, right? So the same way we did it back in Wrath Classic. That is number one. Number two, and this is going wild by the way, Season of Discovery. expansions. So we have gone through Season of Discovery Vanilla now, next one could be TBC, and then next one could be Wrath. And then the longer we have stayed away from Wrath, the more hyped we are to all go back, and the bigger the chances are that we actually do go back as well. So those are kind of my out-of-the-box kind of theories here on why, because surely they have a reason why. They can't just abandon Wrath and never go back, knowing it was the peak of WoW. To me, and I would love to, because they talked about this previously, that they had no plans at all to do Wrath Era servers without elaborating, and that post was over half a year ago now, so 6 months, and I would love to hear what their most recent thoughts are. I'm hoping somebody asks that in some interview.
All of Classic, including Season of Discovery, Cataclysm Classic, Hardcore, we're all constantly learning new things about ourselves, about developing the games. So, technically the answer is yes. The values of our team, most importantly, is something we iterate on, and we just care about, delivering that value to our players.
Right. But for specifically lessons from Season of Discovery going to Cataclysm, I think that's sort of backwards. Season of Discovery took some inspiration. Some of the abilities in Season of Discovery came from Cataclysm era abilities, Cataclysm era talents. So it was kind of the flow a little bit the opposite direction. And a lot of what we're doing in Season of Discovery is trying out our craziest ideas, because then they will help inform what we do in future seasons and future.
There we go. I've said it before. There we go.
We'll go in that direction. Cataclysm is already kind of fully formed. We're not going to radically change Cataclysm based on something done in Season of Discovery. Season of Discovery is a little bit more of our experiments, trying out cool new things. What if we did this crazy thing? That sounds awesome. Let's do it. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and we try those things out. Whereas Cataclysm already knows what it is. I do expect us to take some of the experiments we did in Wrath of Lich King Classic, and maybe those have been impacted in Cataclysm. So what we did, for example, with the Titan Rune dungeons, I'd say there's a good chance that we do something similar with dungeons in later phases of Cataclysm. Not the same.
Haven't they already said that, though?
Things in that spirit, or trying to satisfy
actually confirmed
kinds of design problems of how can we make dungeon content stay relevant through the entire course of the expansion, right? Anyway, so yeah, we learn from all the things we're doing, but it's not quite the flow you're proposing.
No, thank you. That's actually really interesting. And then so another question is about phasings. It's been a huge thing for Classic since the beginning, especially Season of Discovery. Will phasing have a larger place in Cataclysm Classic? Like, since it's already accelerated, how do you guys plan on continuing with that, if that makes sense?
I guess the question is, what do you mean by phasing? Because we're not sure we use the word the same way you use the word.
So, sorry, with phases. Yeah, sorry, with phases in particular.
Oh,
so,
you mean like where there's a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3, a phase 4? Oh, absolutely. Because what the phases are trying to do is mirror the fact that when Burning Crusade, Wrath Lich King, Cataclysm came out the first time, new content and new features unlocked and changed over the course of the patches. So of course there's going to be phases like, hey, we need to have multiple arena seasons, right? We need to have multiple different raid tiers. Not everything's open at the beginning. So obviously these phases of unlocked content will keep happening. And the goal there is to try to recreate the experience the players had the first time around of they were there in 4.03, then they were there in 4.1, and then 4.2 and 4.3, and each of those was a slightly different experience. The challenge is that the data that we the data that we converted over to be recreate Cataclysm Classic is based on the 4.3 data. So many times we say we need to actually take the data that we have and roll it back to the state it was in 4.03 or close to it. A great example of this is the orbs that dropped, chaos orbs that dropped from dungeons. In 4.3, they were unbound, because we made crafting easier by 4.3. But for 4.03, we need to roll them back to they're going to be soulbound again. So I know some people playing in Cataclysm Beta are saying, "Oh, these are unbound." We get very excited. They're going to go back to being bound, because that's the right choice for the beginning of the expansion. And unbound is the right choice for towards the end of the expansion, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes
sense. So there's some challenges there, but it'll all be based on the 4.3 data that we converted over. Yeah.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. So another question I have was about Cataclysm Classic itself. What was the thought process in deciding to continue and create Cataclysm Classic? Did the analytics show that players wanted to continue with Cataclysm Classic after Wrath of the Lich King? And how do those analytics compare to like the vocal lack of interest, at least publicly, on like Reddit or Twitter, to how the player base speaks?
Yeah, so I mean, so kind of touching on that to start with, I think it's really important to note that we love and appreciate our players who are willing to voice their opinions on, you know, publicly like that on the forums, on social media. But we also recognize like the vast majority of our player base isn't necessarily going out of their way to do that. And so
Right.
when we think about how to measure what our players are
Which orbs will be bound? Isn't it the chaos orbs, the ones from the dungeons? Kind of like frozen orbs, but the Cata version. I'm pretty sure that's the orbs they're talking about, so chaos orbs.
interested in, we employ strategies beyond simply combing through some of those more public locations, even though we also do that. What we did find is actually for a lot of players, Cataclysm is their classic. It's when they first started playing WoW. And so for a lot of players, the prospect of returning to Cataclysm and kind of like experiencing Cataclysm as current content is very exciting. We recognize that there's differing opinions. You know, Chris touched on this earlier, differing opinions among our players about what version of WoW is the best version of WoW.
Right.
But we don't necessarily like want to deny all the players that are asking for us to continue their journey into Cataclysm Classic for the sake of some who'd prefer another version. I would say the beauty of World of Warcraft in 2024 is that there are so many different versions of WoW for people to jump into right now. So if Cataclysm Classic isn't necessarily something that interests you, there's always still Classic Era, Hardcore, Season of Discovery, and you know, in addition to Modern, there was also recently a very fun and exciting limited time event called Thunderstorm. So just lots of different options right now. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, we want to supply everybody a way to play Classic, play World of Warcraft the way they want to play it. For some people, Cataclysm is Classic. For some people, it's not. There are many, many people who want to continue their guild forward, and others who don't, and that's fine. We do know there are a lot of players who do want to move forward into Cataclysm, and we've seen that excitement already. All the people of logging into it, playing it. So while the influencers and loudest opinions may say, "Oh no, we don't want this," there's a whole lot of people voting with their feet and saying, "Yeah, no, we do want this. We want to play this," and they are playing it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was feeling as well, at least thinking from the player-base's perspective. So then, with there already being several small changes to Cataclysm Classic in comparison to the original, what is the biggest change to Cata Classic versus the original Cataclysm?
Well, if you don't want to take it, I can jump in, Nora. I think the single biggest system change, at least the system change we made, was the change to the guild system.
Right.
So the guild system was something. I mean, I was there. I worked on the design team back when we first did Cataclysm, and we put a lot of work into it. And we thought it was going to be great. We thought it was going to improve the social climate of the game because we knew that players who played in a guild had a better experience and stuck with the game longer and had more enjoyable experiences, got to see more of the games. Like, let's encourage everybody to be in guilds. And we built this guild system we thought was really cool. And one of its key features was when you went out and did something with your guild would earn experience. Your guild would level up. How cool is that? Not just leveling your character, you're leveling your guild. It turns out, even though that sounded really cool, that it had a damaging effect to the social framework of the game. Because what happened was it took so much experience to level up that the really small guilds, the really tight-knit guilds that like had been running 10-player content together since Karazhan, and we're still doing 10-player raids, and really they had a tight-knit group they loved, they couldn't level up their guild as fast as the guilds that had hundreds of people in them. And so they were at a disadvantage, and they started to bleed off membership. They had a hard time recruiting, and it essentially forced everyone to be in a large guild.
Right.
And we immediately regretted that. And you can see some of the design changes made in Mists of Pandaria were designed to fix that problem. And eventually the whole guild leveling system got removed entirely. So this time around, it's like, let's not make that mistake that we all learned was a mistake the first time around. So guilds no longer have levels. They start off with guild. Every guild has access to every perk. The difference is which perks you can use depend on what is your reputation with the guild. In other words, what kind of activities have you personally done with your guild? And that doesn't care how big your guild is. That just cares how active a player you are. And we think that'll let all players play in the guild and social structures that they enjoy and they love without feeling pressure to change those. And anywhere the guild system felt like it was pushing people to change and be in giant guilds together, even if there are anything like that still, we'll be fixing those things. Our goal is that everybody can play in any size guild they want. So that was a big change and kind of a hard lesson to learn that we learned back the first time around.
Yeah, I actually also want to chime in really quick and say guilds was top of mind for me as well. I was just trying to think to myself, like, was it just because I'm very much focused on the engineering side of things, and guilds was definitely a monumental engineering lift. One of the ways we're able to accomplish so much in Classic is the fact that we are able to share so much code between Modern and then essentially use smoke and mirrors or maybe forked implementations in order to accomplish that Classic effect, right? So that you're playing a Classic game. And so one of the things we decided to do was try and unfork that code such that we're able to share it, able to share the value there, but also, you know, replicate the experience that we wanted to replicate in Cataclysm Classic.
Okay.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about some other types of changes that we're likely to do in Cataclysm, which is in sort of the class balance space, which has kind of two components to it. One is, and I've been running into this a lot, I get a bug report comes across my deck. Here's this bug, you need to fix it. And we actually can run old Cataclysm servers that run exactly as Cataclysm was back in the day. They wouldn't work well for connecting to the public because they don't support bottom battlement features, but we can test them internally. So I run the old Cataclysm server, and like, the bug was there back in the first time around. Should I fix it? Because fixing this bug will end up nerfing the class. The class will become less powerful if I fix the bug where they were getting the benefit of this interaction, and if I fix it, it goes away. And a lot of times we'd be like, well, but if we don't fix it, it gets really confusing for players to understand how their character works, right? It's because players are very savvy. They'll find out how it works. They share information much more now than they did 14 years ago. They'll find it, they'll use it, and it'll be very confusing to new players. So the right thing to do is to fix the bug. So what about the fact we just nerfed the characters? So talking with other designers on the team, what we land on the policy there is that we should fix these bugs in order to make the game comprehensible to everyone. So everyone understands how the game works. Things match their tooltip. But whenever fixing a bug results in nerfing a class, that we should then compensate them by giving them a buff in some way that compensates for the change and makes up for what we've taken away. That will be our policy moving forward with that kind of change. There's another type of bug, of course, is what about when I fix a bug, it makes the class stronger? So Wrath of the Lich King, we did some work on Ignite and Deep Wounds to make them not quote unquote munch, where if two fire crits landed at the exact same moment or very close to each other, one of them would be lost and the damage wouldn't be counted, which was a long-standing bug since 2004 with World of Warcraft. It was fixed in the modern game. I think we probably fixed it sometime around Warlords of Draenor. That when we first fixed it, we're like, hey, I can take that learning, I can backport it to Wrath of the Lich King, we can make that stop happening. There's a danger that fire mages, especially with things like combustion, are going to be too strong in Cataclysm because I fixed that bug again in Cataclysm. So the ignites won't be lost, but Ignite's a much more complex phenomenon, partly because of combustion in Cataclysm. So there are a lot of new bugs I had to fix to make it jive with the Wrath of the Lich King version. And we'll be watching fire mages closely to see if maybe they're not too powerful. And that kind of gets to the third type of thing, which is during Wrath of the Lich King Classic, we made class balance changes, right? We introduced new things when classes were not strong enough, or when classes were too strong to try to fix things, right? We didn't like gargoyle snapshotting, we fixed that, right? Feral druids were too weak, so we did the changes for Omen of Clarity, added some new glyphs here and there. We are likely to make those kinds of tweaks, but we will very, very cautious with what we do, and it will only really be done when something's really an outlier, way too high or way too low. They're a little bit strong, fine.
This is fine. This is like them talking about how they are handling bug fixes on a general basis. But what about other bugs that don't affect classes? What about the bug that was in the pre-patch where you could buy heirlooms for justice points, get the heirlooms into your collection, and then refund the justice points, and buy a new heirloom piece, and repeat this process and literally get all the heirlooms for free? Or do the same thing with honor points, where you could actually literally spend honor on honor gear, get it into your collections, refund the gear for honor points, and keep that gear as well. Like, what about those bugs? And there's even a bug right now in the game that I don't even know if I should talk about publicly. It might have been fixed, it might have not, and it's about Death Knights. If you're playing an Unholy Death Knight, there is / was a way for you to permanently change your blood runes to an unholy rune, or like to a death rune, not unholy, but like death rune. So you could permanently have all your blood runes respawning as a death rune. And I'm not going to go too far into it, but all you would have to do is set up a dual spec and pick 2 talent points into a different place and respec back, and you would have 2 for the death runes. And whenever they recharged, which they're supposed to come back as a blood rune, they would come back as a death rune. If you're playing on Holy DK, you probably know how much of a DPS increase that is. And yes, I will link the video. I already have linked it once, and I'll link it at the end of me watching it as well. I'm just not going to continuously link it throughout watching, but I will link it at the end, and already have. But all those bugs, like what about all those bugs? Because this is talking about bugs that might buff or nerf a class. But what about all the other ones? The pre-patch has just been so full of bugs. It has been ridiculous. It feels like a private server, a PTR of a private server is the state it launched in. It even launched with the guild bank permissions changing with the guild system. So some guild banks everyone could loot from. So if you're having what's it called again? If you have a raiding guild with casuals, the casual could have taken the character, could have taken everything in the guild bank. And some guilds even got the cash flow perk, even though that was removed. And for all the people that abused the justice points, by the way, and the honor points and refunded those, they still have the items in their collections. What about those bugs? Right, because this is talking about obvious bug fixes.
Right, it's when things are out of strong that's causing a problem. We're like, okay, the way you beat this encounter is you just load your raid all with this class, or never bring that class. Those are kind of our guidelines there. But we are likely, just like Wrath of the Lich King, to make small changes to class balance over time to keep things in a good place. And part of that is driven by players know so much more today. They have so much more analytics. They're sharing so much more information. They will find the perfect way to play. I found during Wrath of the Lich King Classic that the average player played as well as most of the best players did the first time around. And we're going to see that same thing again. And sometimes they discover things that are just too good, and we have to fix it.
That makes perfect sense. I'm sure fire mages aren't going to enjoy that information that you're watching them, but
right now they're very strong, so they're enjoying the fact that Ignite is amazing. So we'll just keep watching it. You know.
No, that's perfect. So my next question is gonna be a controversial one, but with GDKP's absurd popularity, but the heavy positivity that its ban received in Season of Discovery, do you think you'll continue that streak and ban GDKPs in Cataclysm Classic?
Ooh.
You know, so I guess
Go ahead, Nora.
Season of Discovery is, you know, it's a very different game. It's based on Classic Era, and I would say the delta between Classic Era and Cataclysm Classic is quite significant in terms of systems, tuning, design. Just because banning GDKPs in Season of Discovery led to some very positive results doesn't necessarily mean we can assume we'd see the same results in Cataclysm Classic.
Yes, you would.
However, we do talk about these things. We try to tease apart the nuances of what might work for each version of WoW and try to understand.
The reason why they don't want to ban GDKPs in Cataclysm, and the reason why you probably will not see that happen, and the reason why they think it will not have the same effect in Cataclysm as it does in Season of Discovery, is that in Season of Discovery, there is no WoW token. All gold buying and gold selling goes on behind closed doors in the black market. You buy gold from bots, you sell gold, you do all of those things behind closed doors. In Cataclysm, Blizzard shares in on the revenue. They are the direct suppliers of your gold. If you have a busy work life in real life and you still want to raid and you want to do GDKPs, Blizzard directly profits of you if you're doing WoW tokens, which a lot of people do now, because yes, you could get more gold by buying gold on the black market, but you always you run the risk of getting banned. By buying WoW tokens, you have a legitimate allowed way to buy gold, in which case this is why, and I'll stand by this, I'll die on this hill, this is why they will not ban GDKPs in Cataclysm. They would have if there was no WoW tokens, but they've put the WoW tokens in now, so GDKPs are here to stay. And this is the thing, they saw a positive thing about this in Season of Discovery. You could easily say that the same positive effect would be in Cataclysm as well. Easily. Because you already know, you run the numbers, you see in the data, you see that some people quit, but those are the big spenders anyway. Those are the guys that play your game only to buy gold and ruin the game and pump the inflation, the people doing gold buying. I would say 5% of raiders in Season of Discovery quit with the GDKP change, and out of those 5%, half of them were literally selling gold. So, like, we are better off without them. And the same thing could be said in Cataclysm. But Blizzard is directly piecing, like, they're profiting. They are having a slice of the pie. This is why. It's very easy. But they will never say that, by the way. They will never say it. But that's why.
And why, to answer your question, we don't have plans to ban GDKPs in Cataclysm Classic. I'm not going to promise that we won't, but right now, anyway, we don't have any plans for it.
Okay.
The people playing Cataclysm Classic have been playing with GDKPs since Blackwing Lair. It would be a big change to take it away from them.
Absolutely.
Whereas in Season...
No, it would be the same big change in Cataclysm like it was in Season of Discovery. Because the people that did GDKPs in Season of Discovery, guess what? They were doing GDKPs in Classic WoW, TBC, Wrath, and now they're doing it in Season of Discovery. They've been doing it for exactly as long. Be better.
In Discovery, there wasn't really an established raid community yet. We made that change. So we're always very careful about when we're going to change the experience of an existing community. And that's why it was safer to do in Season Discovery. And it would be a pretty risky thing to do in Cataclysm, I think. Can't say we won't, but it's a much riskier decision. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Thank you. So another question I have, and this one's about the team's opinion on it, but does the dev team believe that Cataclysm Classic is actually part of the so-called class?
This is once again why I would never get an interview like this, by the way, because I would ask a follow-up question here about that WoW token and how they're profiting off of the piece of the pie, and then try to question them on that as well. I do assume you have to like pre-send these in and get them approved, so that question wouldn't get approved, but I would talk about it afterwards. So hey, there we go. Like that's literally the reason. The reason why GDKP is not getting banned in Cataclysm, WoW token. Boom. Didn't need to talk more about it. Just literally one sentence, 2 words. Boom.
Classic word of WoW, or is the term classic simply now just a moniker in regards to re-releasing old versions of the game?
So, the classic team's made up of players, of people of differing opinions. And so it really depends on who you ask. Cataclysm originally launched about 14 years ago. And so the delta between Cataclysm and modern World of Warcraft is significant. Some would consider Cataclysm a classic experience, absolutely. And if you would ask me, it's not really the place of the classic dev team to draw that line for people. The focus of our team is really to deliver these incredibly nostalgic, incredibly significant moments in World of Warcraft history. And for progression players specifically, we want to make sure we're giving them the opportunity to experience that continuity that Chris touched on earlier, the continuity of their journey, whether they've been with us since 2019 or whether they're joining us for the first time in Cataclysm Classic.
I think I said this before, classic means something different to everybody. Everybody has a different definition of where classic begins and ends for them. And we want to serve all those people. If they for them the classic experience means Cataclysm, then Cataclysm is what they're going to be able to play. Keep in mind, 14 years ago, that we have people working on our team that were in elementary school when that happened, and they're very excited because they never got to play it. So for them, it's classic because you can't really have the true Cataclysm experience when the level cap is much higher, and you have the modern experience is very different. To really experience it correctly, you have to have that the level 85 cap and have it be the current content. And for them, they really want to do that because they never got to. So again, the definition of classic depends on your point of view and where you're coming from. And we want, again, to serve every player as much as we can.
Oh, that's a very valid answer. Thank you very much for that one. And then my next question is about the clients. When it does come to clients, will there be a Wrath of the Lich King or TBC era server or clients like that in the future?
He asked it. Dude, I was foreshadowing this. I said it, like this is probably 20 minutes ago at this point. I said that. I was hoping somebody would ask it. And I don't think I gave him that feedback. He did message me a little bit, but I don't think I specifically asked that one. But yes, thank you, Eben. Good question, thank you. Oh yeah.
And on that note, do you see SOD separating into a new client like Wrath of the Lich King and Cata Classic has?
So it's much easier to answer that second question.
Okay.
One of the things we were very careful about with Season or Discovery is Season or Discovery runs on the exact same data as the Classic era. So everything that's been built for Season or Discovery is built in a very modular way, so we can turn off individual pieces.
Right.
Which is actually very exciting because it means in future seasons we could turn on some of it and reuse it, and turn off others that we never want to use again. So we have that kind of ability to bring it in. But Classic Era and Season Discovery have the exact same database, and so you don't need a separate client. They're really the same thing. It's just a matter of what variables have been turned on the server to activate and deactivate different things. As far as clients or a new server specifically for Burning Crusade and Wrath Lich King, we don't have any plans to do that now, although we have heard that many people would love to have that. It's not something we currently plan to make available. You never know.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if you can expand upon that, but you said further seasons for Season of Discovery, or like, can you say anything about what may come later, or is that just a hard no right now?
There will be more new stuff after Season of Discovery. That's all I can say. Anything more than that, we definitely are exploring what we want to do next.
You've just ignited 1,000 new videos off that one comment. Thank you very much. Good. You've saved my stream. Going on to my next question, in regards to difficulty and tuning, Cataclysm was really overtuned at launch back in 2010, but was fixed over time, and the tuning happened, dungeons and raids became easier. Will Cataclysm Classic launch with that same difficulty, aka pre-nerf, or will it be post-nerf when it launches?
This one's pretty easy. So you'll be experiencing the post-nerf versions of dungeons and raids.
Okay.
Thanks.
It's kind of in part due to the way that our data conversion process goes. We're basically doing a three-way merge between original latest Wrath and original latest Cataclysm, and then also Wrath Classic, and then we're trying to produce that 440 data, right? And so the data that we ended up with was the post-nerf versions, and we were like, okay, let's look at the lift that would be involved in like trying to replicate the pre-nerf and then later change it to post-nerf, and it was just kind of like, okay, that doesn't necessarily have that, we kind of look at any decision we make in terms of like a function of positive impact for our players, like is it worth the lift and effort, and how does it kind of factor into our timeline? How does it factor into all of the other incredibly cool stuff we've got going on the team?
And I think, as you've alluded to, the difficulty of Cataclysm at launch wasn't very popular with the players. So like, it's like going back to the difficulty, we could do that work, it just wouldn't have a payoff, and it would probably make some of our players really upset if we did it. So to be more consistent with Lich King, we're going to go with the post-nerf version. There was a lot of effort, like when Cataclysm first launched, the idea was, hey, things have gotten too easy. Let's make things a lot harder again. Let's make mana really hard. Let's make the healers run out of mana. Let's make the dungeons really hard, like Burning Crusade dungeons. And it's just not what players wanted. And so we shouldn't make that misstep again.
Okay, no, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. So my next question is kind of an interesting one. With Thunderstorm and WoW Remix adding so many collectibles that transfer right onto your retail account, will transmog/mount titles items earned in Cataclysm and beforehand be able to be transferred to retail at the end of Cataclysm, or will everything you've earned still stay in a separate client? Like, is there ever going to be something where all the stuff you earned will go to retail in the future?
Sorry, my audio cut out for just a sec there.
So right now, the plan, what we've built so far, everything will stay in this separate Cataclysm, Classic through Cataclysm era. I think that's a very reasonable request, though, of being able to somehow connect these two things at some point.
Yeah.
So I think that may happen someday, but we are currently not working on that. Not to say it'll never happen, and we know it's a big request from players. They want to essentially be able to take things from one to the other. But there's a lot of interactions and conflicts and concerns to work out, right? We can't just knee-jerk say, oh yeah, make it happen. There's going to be a lot of complexity of figuring out and what's allowed to move forward, and is it labeled differently? So like, does somebody who did Naxxramas and killed Kel'Thuzad the first time around have a different achievement than somebody who did it the second time around, right?
Of course.
Right. You know what I mean? There's a lot of implications for keeping everyone's achievements and everyone's things that they did feel like they're still valued. So it's a complex problem to solve, on top of even on just from design, on top of the already existing difficult engineering problem to solve.
Okay, thank you. That answers the question. I know a lot of people have been wanting it for a while, and I know it's a complex task, so it does make sense that it might happen in the future. My last question is just one about something where you guys might be interested in is, what is a big change you'd personally like to make for Cataclysm Classic but couldn't fit into the development pipeline or make it authentically work in Cataclysm Classic?
Talents.
What's
Talent
that, Nora?
system. I said it's on the talent system revamp.
One request that has come out, and I can talk about this a bit, was could we go back to the original talent system instead of the new Cataclysm talent system? So as you know, Cataclysm did a massive revamp of the talents, where you got one talent every other level up through level 80, and then you got one every level 80 to 85. And it was just very different from the original, and some people are sad to not keep the original talent system. Just telling a little story, we actually did have a version of the talents like that during development that we did not release because we decided the talent tree system had become too unwieldy. The big worry with it actually was players who were returning to the game after even just a few months absence were lost in these giant talent trees that they had to spend 76 talent points. It was just nutty in terms of the sheer number of talent points that you had to spend. So the reason we changed it the first time was because it was so overwhelming. And there was some discussion about should we go back to the original, but I think ultimately had we tried to recreate the old talent trees, we would have changed the experience so much that it really wouldn't be Cataclysm Classic. It would have become something different because we would have had to create new talents. We would have had to fill in the holes in the talent, change what the talent points mean, change the balance and design. It would have fundamentally changed it to not really be Cataclysm Classic. It would be something that looked like Cataclysm Classic, but wasn't the same. So in the spirit of delivering the experience again for people who have wanted the nostalgia of playing it again, the right choice was not to go back and redo the talent system. As attractive an idea as that was, the right choice was to leave it as it is and let people experience Cataclysm as it was.
It can be very tempting to, to see these expansions, and in some ways they are our chance to kind of, smooth over any areas of friction or make adjustments wherever we see fit. And it can very quickly be, very tempting for us to start to broaden those changes. And so we have to really check ourselves and be like, okay, wait, is this really good for the game? Or are we being selfish? Is Nora being selfish and wanting the talent system revamped? So it's important.
You can think of the seasonal content like Season of Discovery as the place where we get a chance to experiment with those what ifs.
Okay.
But when we were delivering the quote unquote classic Cataclysm or classic Lich King, we're trying to recreate the experience, and we really shouldn't go too deep into the what ifs. We can make minor changes that keep things essentially the same.
That sounds amazing.
I think that final point there, even though I would love to see I would have really loved to see the level 80 talent point system in Cataclysm, but I think for Cataclysm Classic, they have a point, and I do agree with the point that they should go with the Cataclysm talent point system, because that's Cataclysm. Even if I agree with that or not, that's what I remember personally as well from Cataclysm, so it helps me with my personal nostalgia, I guess, of the expansion. And then if we ever do get a version of Cataclysm with like a lot of changes later down the line, as a seasonal thing or whatever, then they can try to mix and match. It could be fun. Then we can have like Cataclysm with the Mythic Plus dungeons and pre-nerf raids, level 80 talent point systems, brand new class mechanics. I don't know.
I hope maybe someday we might get like a season of Cataclysm where we get to see that. But thank you very much for answering all these questions. I'm sure the community is going to love that. I know we just hit our time. I'm not sure if we have any extra time or you guys have to go to your next interview. So I just want to say thank you guys very much for this interview and this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for chatting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
You know what, Eben, you told me that it was a good interview, and I agree with you. I think that was a really good one. A lot of good information, lots of good discussions, good questions, by the way, as well, once again. Really good interview. I really enjoyed that one. It gave us a lot of insight, some answers. They touched on some important topics, like for example the talent point system. They have been thinking about this, and the Wrath Era servers. They talked a little bit more about that as well. They talked about the whole thing about classes, fixing class bugs, mage ignite, stuff like that. What their whole thought process is and their stance. So we got more on that as well. We have hints at new season of Discovery stuff, or like new seasons, or futures after Season of Discovery. A lot of hints in this interview. A lot of things were said with saying like minimal stuff, and if you read between the lines, this interview was really good, and even the answers they gave was really good as well. I really thoroughly enjoyed that interview. We're getting a sequel to Season of Discovery. Well, they didn't really say a sequel, but they said there's new stuff coming after Season of Discovery, which to me, like, there's ways to interpret this. New things coming after Season of Discovery. Based on that alone, you can make like 10,000 different suggestions, but it's realistically going to be a new season. The only question is where. It could be a TBC Season of Discovery with like the same sort of style of like class abilities. It could be a whole new thing where you have new classes, or you could have new class mechanics instead of having runes where you just literally have brand new abilities in Classic WoW, Vanilla WoW, running through that again. It can be TBC, can be Wrath, can be Cataclysm. There can be so many things. There's basically new things coming, and to me that is really exciting. Now, we're only halfway through Season of Discovery as well, so touching on this topic really early, it's really cool, it's really nice. And once again, good video by Ebonheart. I'll be linking the interview in chat. The !interview command has been linking you guys to something else, and if you were here yesterday, you know exactly what that was. That is my reaction to the other interview, which you guys will have early access to, or I guess like a couple hours early. You can go and check it out to see my a little bit unhinged reaction to that one. But hey, there we go. What are the enabled drops? I believe it's a retail drop, so if you're playing like both versions of the game, it's a Eye of the Legion pet in World of Warcraft. So, with that being said, that was video 1. Once again, I told you guys I was going to give you the link, so of course I will give you the link if you want to see the entire thing, and you've been tuning into the stream like over time. We're starting off by watching 2 videos here, so there we go. You might have missed out on a little bit of really good information, and I'll give you the link right about here. So go and check it out, show Ebonheart some love. I'll be leaving a comment and a like right here as well.